Just going to kind of demonstrate this point. I'm quite certain this is correct because it's like, this is like Magna Carta. It's like the underlying law. So if any other laws are made that are against it, then they're invalid or illegal or on any orders or judgments. So we've got the judge, right? And then we've got the police chief, right? So this is like what I've worked out from the law. So the judge, they've got different oaths, right? So the judge has got an oath that he cannot give any favours for justice, okay? Now, I know that a judge in Leicester, for example, or somewhere, might have been Leicester actually, but there was like some person who got fined and he felt sorry for him, so he paid his fine for him. That actually was in the newspapers. I think that's illegal, because that's a favour. He did him a favour, right? For injustice. But like, it's mainly meant to be. It's from the claim of right. There's lots of things about oaths in the claim of right, and they've got this legal basis where they can't to get you to give evidence or to confess. They can't say, oh, if you confess, we'll do you a favour or we'll let you off. They can't bargain for justice. No, sometimes they say that if you plead guilty, you'll get a less sentence or penalty. There's some that's problematic. But if they were to sort of make an actual official agreement, basically, if you confess, I won't prosecute you. I won't give you a tough sentence, right? They're not meant to give bargains or deals, right? No, but this is the judge, right? Not the police chief. Now, the thing is, right, when you are driving in a car, right? When you're driving in a car, and if you set off a speed camera and get a fine, right, it goes to the ticket office, which the police chief's in charge of the ticket office, right? Now, if they usually send you a letter, and it's usually futile to argue it, right? With the police. No one argues out of those. I mean, there are certain things, if it didn't get to you in, 14 days, or if there's an error on it, or, in it's worded wrong, or, all that sort of, technical intricacies. But, that's not what this video is about. This is about the underlying basis, right? So the ticket office, the police has a ticket office, right? And they're processing all the fines, right? And effectively, they just want you to say, yes, I was a driver, and yes, I admit that, I did the offence, and just pay the money, right? If you pay the money, I don't know how much it is now, like probably a lot more than 60 quid, but I'm just going to say 60, right? So the deal is, and let's get that word right, the deal is, if you agree that you broke the law, confess, right, and pay £60, right, then, that's okay. You won't have to go to a court, right? Now, the thing is, that's a deal. That is a favour. The police chief has done you a favour, because if you pay him the £60, right, I know this is all set out in law, modern law, but forget that, because we're talking about Magna Carta now, what the law has to be based on, right? So if the police chief, right, he's done you a favour, you've paid him £60 and you haven't had to go to court, right? But notice he gave you a deal, and it's called an offer, I think that's the important word here. He gave you an offer, right? He offered you a deal. He offered you a favour. The police chief. If you pay £60, you won't have to go to court, right, and face a trial. Now, that's a trial by your peers, when your peers can actually say that you're innocent by law or just by their conscience. This is what Extinction Rebellion are on about conscience. But you ain't going to get a jury. You ain't going to get a jury in a magistrate's court anyway for a lesser offence since about 1850, right? Which, you know, really, Magna Carta, we have the right to a fair trial, right? So, but notice the main thing about this here is that the oath, what's happened is that instead of the judge giving you this offer, right, and breaking his oath, instead of the judge saying, like, come on, right, you know, just confess and I'll just give you 60 quid. Give 60 quid and we'll call it a deal, right? You know, if you confess, you know, we'll sort it out with 60 quid, you know. That would be illegal by the oath, right? But instead, right, what's happening is we've got the wires, they've done the switcheroony. The police chief doesn't have the same oath as a judge. He's got a different oath just to uphold the law, you know, and actually the police didn't have an oath of allegiance. Jurors don't have to take the oath of allegiance, I don't think, but the police chief usually does now. Or there are different police oaths, but it's definitely not the judge's oath, right? And it doesn't have that thing. So the police chief doesn't have the oath of favours. So what's happening is that he's managing to pull this offer, this deal, directly on you, right, without the judge breaking his oath, right? But this is the for me, this is the absolute this is almost like they must have come to this, that they must have like they must have had like a kind of like an orgy or some kind of like, you know, a group wanking session over this when they all came to this, right? You know, and devised the whole N.I.P process, right? The police chief cannot hold common pleas, right? The police chief cannot hold common pleas. He cannot take pleas from people, only a judge, right? But in order for you to be fined, and confess, therefore you receive the punishment, you're immersed, right? You have to confess. Well, that's saying that you're guilty, surely, because otherwise, if you say you're not guilty, you're not going to pay the fine. You can't receive the fine, or you can't be liable to the fine unless you've confessed the crime, right? And you haven't been to a court, right? So how can the police chief, accept the 50 quid if he can't hold common pleas, right? Now, he might say, oh, when you put the confession, he sends it to a court, whatever, but the ticket office just processes loads of fines automatically, and they send you a letter, and then they send you another letter, notice of intended prosecution. Well, it's intending to prosecute you if you don't pay the fine. Now, what happens when you don't pay the fine? It's N.I.P, notice of intended prosecution. So he's intending to prosecute you in a court, unless you pay the fine. So if you pay the fine, you won't go to court, right? Now, you might think, well, if you're not before a court, then you won't have to plead guilty or not guilty, right? This is intended prosecution, but the thing is, if you admit that you did it and you accept the offer from the police chief, not the judge, right? You are admitting guilty to an offence, though. You're saying that you did something, right? So it's intended prosecution. If you pay the money, you don't go to court, but you must be pleading guilty, accepting liability, agreeing that you broke the law in order to be fined, be liable to pay a fine, right? Now that's what the police chief can't do. So it's almost kind of like, the Grim Reaper, it's like a right, it's almost like hot wiring, it's almost like someone short circuit or hot wire that's been hot wired or short circuited wrong, extremely, extremely wrong. I would say like illegally, faulty towers, right? I think that this is the whole thing. I think that N.I.P is illegal, and it doesn't matter what modern legislation they devised the process and designed the process, because it goes against Magna Carta, which has got these fundamental principles that you're not allowed to do, no matter what. And the thing is that any order or judgment against Magna Carta is void, right? But if you didn't go to court and you didn't have a prosecution against you, right? Notice of intended prosecution unless you pay. If you didn't have an order against you by a judge, if you weren't prosecuted, right? Then in the Magna Carta, all judgments are void. But you paid a fine, right? And got 3 points from the police chief. So, but how can that be void? Because surely anything against the Magna Carta is void if it wasn't done properly. So, this is what I've worked out. I started getting onto this from the claim of right because of this thing where you're not allowed to get confessions for favours, and I'm starting to think, I'll give you the police chief will come about it. Come on, accept this offer. We'll give you this offer. And the thing is, this, doing a minor offence, 2 or 3 times, But how the police work it out is, you did something minor, then you did something else minor, then you did something else minor, and they're trying to make out that makes something severe. So you should face losing your license. But on none of those occasions did you do anything severely wrong. It was very light. And many times, if someone does an act or action and goes on a speed awareness course, even if you've done on this occasion here, if it was only minor like this person, why should you ever have to face a serious punishment for someone who did the same thing? It's not fair, and it's not being treated equally in law, right? No one ever did a serious offence, So this thing that you can only be punished equally for, what you've done or whatever. And people have, lost their driving licenses. You're not allowed to have your livelihood taken from you, right? But when you use your license, if your career is a delivery driver, you can't do it. But I think they actually, anything that's set in law that says you can't do it, they like to do it. Anything that says, they and what they can't do, rather than them holding us accountable to the law. We can't do this. We can't do that. Making laws up like the new laws in Scotland. You can't say this or that in your own house, right? The ministers, MPs, Parliament judges, they are the ones who absolutely love getting away with breaking the law, but the law that says what they can't do, and they love actually breaking it, and they're unstoppable. There's nothing they can't do, and that's what I think this is all about. And a lot of those clauses are still in effect. So I think the whole N.I.P thing's illegal. And I know that the ULEZ is illegal because that's against another Magna Carta clause like the Liberty of London or whatever, with no tolls within London. So